Hi, and welcome to Art with Mrs. Torres. Today we are going to be learning about this amazing phenomenon called the aurora. Now, these pictures here were taken in Canada. This is the Aurora Borealis, which means the northern lights. Now, these pictures are actual photographs taken by different photographers in Canada. I want to point out this one especially because this picture was taken by a photographer named Dr. Wayne Lynch. And I want you to notice that there is a reindeer, now they call them caribou in Canada, in the foreground, and you can see the northern lights happening in the background. Now, what are the northern lights, you're asking? I'm wondering myself. I read about it and I learned that it's the particles from the sun traveling toward the earth. Now, our earth is so strong, it has a magnetic field, especially at the North Pole and the South Pole. And these magnetic fields are able to push those particles from the sun back. And it's like a dance that happens in the sky between the hot particle sun called the solar wind hitting our magnetic field. And that fight between the two of them becomes this beautiful light show and dance that happens in the sky. Now, unfortunately, the photos don't really show the dance happening, but if you Google it, you'll be able to find some amazing videos of the lights actually moving in the sky. It's kind of like a curtain that's traveling, like a rainbow curtain that's floating up into the atmosphere. It's so beautiful, and I wanted to try to recreate it today. So I think what we're going to be using is some watercolor paint. I'm excited because we're going to be taking some watercolor, moving it around on our paper to kind of recreate that image of the northern lights. So follow along with me. We're going to have a lot of fun today.
Well, let's begin our lesson. We are going to be making a picture of the northern lights, or the Aurora Borealis. That is those beautiful lights that you see floating in the sky. We are going to be using watercolor paper. And now, if you don't have watercolor paper, you could also use regular paper, copy paper. But I would recommend watercolor paper because we're going to be painting today. You're also going to need a black crayon. Now for today, I'm going to be using one of my big jumbo crayons to color with, but you can use just any black crayon that you have around the house. That's how we're going to be creating our tree and the ground underneath. Another item you're going to need is a large paintbrush. Now, any type of round or flat brush that's a little bigger than the typical paintbrush that comes inside your paint set. We're going to be using watercolor paints. I'm just using my simple watercolor paints I have here, and you can use any brand, it doesn't matter. Now, the other item that you're going to need is a cup or a bowl of water to clean your brush, and of course, a napkin that you can wipe your brush off on. Now, because we're going to be letting these paints drip off of our paper as we paint them, you're going to need something to protect your your table. So I'm using just some old construction paper here. I have a couple stacks of it. And when I'm using this to protect my table, then I won't get paint all over my table. So you're going to want to make sure you have something. You could use newspapers, you could use paper towels, just something to protect your table before we start painting. So go ahead and pause the video. You're going to go and look for a piece of watercolor paper, a large or medium-sized paintbrush, a black crayon, some watercolors, and a cup or a bowl of water, and a napkin. Go ahead and pause the video, go gather those items up, and then meet me back here. Well, welcome back. I have my watercolor paper, I have something to protect my table underneath, and I have some water, my napkin, and my paint set. Now I'm going to move my paint set off for just a minute while we get ready to wet parts of our paper. Now you are going to decide right now which direction do you want to paint. I am going to be making my paper tall like a door, similar to the way this photograph is tall like a door. If you notice that when I painted my colors, I let them run back and forth and up and down to let them spread all over my paper. That's what we're going to be doing today. Let's begin By using a large or medium-sized brush, we're going to get some water on our brush, and we're going to start to wet the top section of our paper. So right up here, I'm just going to be adding lots of water. You're just going to move that water very softly back and forth on your paper. Now, the first thing you're going to notice as you're doing this is that your paper is going to start to curl up a little bit. Now, keep dipping your brush in the water and adding adding water little by little to your paper. We're going to go about halfway down. Now, the reason we're only going to stop at halfway is if we paint the whole paper with water, by the time we get down to the bottom, the top is going to be dry. So I'm just going to use my finger to hold my paper down. And now I'm going to start adding some colors. So when we look at our photograph, you'll see lots of beautiful colors in the sky. Now, the northern lights usually are greens and blues and purples, but sometimes you can see reds and oranges in the sky and even pink. So you get to create whatever colors you would like in your sky today. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my water paints and I'm going to start to add a little bit of water to the colors that I think I'm going to want to use. Now you'll notice I'm just grabbing my brush and letting the water drip right over the colors I want to use. I'm going to definitely use purple, some blue, and for sure green. There's a lot of green in that photograph. And then I am going to add some black, which is my final color. And make sure that your brush is not touching the paint. We're just kind of shaking it over those colors. Now those colors are going to soften up. And all I'm going to do now is start to add my first color. My first color that I'm going to work with is yellow. It's the lightest color. I don't want to start with black, because if I start with black, it's going to make my water get really dirty very quickly. So the first thing I'm going to do is just find a place where I want to add some yellow. Now you'll notice when I put my yellow down here, it didn't spread. That's because my paper is dry. We only want to add the color where our paper is wet. Now once I put one color in, I'm going to rinse my brush, and now I'm going to move on and add another color around it. Now I'm going to pop some green around my yellow. I'm just kind of tapping my brush, grabbing some more of that green watery paint. Now every once in a while you're going to want to rinse out your brush and add a couple more drops of water to those colors so they're nice and wet. What's another color that you see in my photograph of the northern lights? Do you see some blue? I see beautiful blue. Happens to be one of my favorite colors. I'm going to definitely add some blue in my picture. You want to work fairly quickly, and if your paper is dry, add a little bit more water to it. Just rinse out your brush, drop a couple more drops of water on it. That's going to help those colors spread out together. You can see where my paper is dry down here. Nothing is moving down to the bottom of my paper, so I'm going to start to add some water now to the bottom of my paper. I'm just using water, spreading out that water, and pretty soon, once I get my paper wet around that yellow, watch what's going to happen. Those colors are going to start to mix and travel together. I'm going to take that water, I'm going to spread it all the way down to the bottom. Now I can start to add some more colors to my paper. We want to use lots of beautiful colors. Now I could leave it just like this. This is so pretty, but I'm going to add another one of my favorite colors. I am adding purple. Do you like purple? I love purple, and I see some purple in that photograph. Now we don't have to copy the photograph. We're just kind of having our own fun. Now if you wanted to add pink, unfortunately my watercolor set doesn't have pink, but I do have red. If you have pink, you can add pink, but I have red, and my red looks just fine next to the purple. Look at that pretty color. When I'm all finished with all the colors, my paper is filled with color. Then I'm going to add a little bit of black. We want to add a little black around the edges. So I'm just going to come up here, and I'm going to drop a little black at the top of my paper, right at the very tippity top, just kind of tapping my brush with that black water. And you can even add a little bit of black in another lip area if you want to. Now the best part's coming up. Once all of your paper is wet, you'll notice right down here where my paper's curling, my color is not spreading. That means my paper isn't wet. I need to add a little bit of water, or I have a little black in my brush. I'll put that down there. Now, best part is coming up. I'm gonna rinse out my brush, lay it off to the side, and now I'm going to start to move my paper and let those colors run together. Now you can choose to pick up your paper from the top and hang it, or from the side. I'm going to let you decide which way you want your paper to run. So watch, I'm going to do it this way so you can watch my colors start to trickle down the paper. And the colors dripping onto my paper down below. And then I can change direction and run it the other way. So let me turn it this way so you can watch my colors running down the paper. Look at that. That is so cool. Do you see it moving? Now, when you're all finished and you like the way your paper looks, you can set it back down on the table. And if there's any spots that didn't get covered in paint, you can just add a wet brush to those spots and the colors will fill in. I have a little area right there. I've got a little fingerprint down here. So now I'm going to let this paper dry. And you're going to let your paper dry, and then you're going to meet me back here later with our crayon, and we'll start to draw our tree. So go ahead and take this paper. You can carry it by carrying the background paper like this out into the sunshine, if you have some sunshine, and let the sun dry your paper, or put it near a heater vent, and then meet me back here, and we will finish our painting. Welcome back. Now you have your paper, it's dry. You're going to decide whether you want your paper to be this direction, or this direction, or this direction, or this direction. It's up to you. You can draw your picture tall like a door. This is vertical. Or you could make it horizontal. This photographer took their picture tall, so I'm going to be making my picture tall. I think I'm going to place my darkest part of my sky up this high. Now let's get ready with our black crayon to create our silhouette of our tree. Now a silhouette is just kind of like looking at a shadow of something, an outline of something. If you look here, we can't see the leaves on the tree. We can't see the bark. We just see the outline of the tree. That's because the light behind the tree is brighter than the front of the tree where we're seeing the shadows. This is called the silhouette. So we are going to be making our tree like a silhouette also. You're going to be starting by using your crayon. Now, I'm going to use a big chubby crayon today, but if you have a regular black crayon, this will work just as well. I'm just going to be using this because it's a little faster for me to do here on camera. All right, first thing we need to do is decide where and how high we want the ground underneath our tree. So there's going to be my ground, and then I'm going to color it in with my crayon. So you're going to do the same thing. Now make sure that you have a couple pieces of paper underneath you when you're coloring. And the reason I like to have a couple pieces of paper underneath is that way I don't pick up the texture of the table underneath me. Now when you're done coloring that little space underneath where your tree is going to be growing from, then we're going to draw one long line that starts from the bottom and it goes not all the way to the top. We're going to stop it before it hits the top. So I'm just going to go like this in the center of my paper and draw a line with my crayon going up, 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 up. And I'm going to stop it before it gets to the top. I'm going to stop mine right about here. Now we need to thicken our tree trunk because it's not that skinny. It's a little bit thicker at the bottom especially. So I'm going to draw another line on this side that goes up, 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 and it's going to get a little bit skinnier as it comes up to the top, and it's going to connect to the first line. And then I'm going to fill that space in with my crayon. Okay, so now I want my trunk a little chubbier at the bottom, so I'm going to make it just a little fatter. And I want to make sure that it blends nicely, that it goes from wide to medium to super skinny all the way up at the top. I'm going to make mine a little taller and a little skinnier at the top. See how I did that? Okay, let's get ready to draw the different branches on our tree. So when we look at this picture, you'll see the branches come out from the center of the trunk. And you'll notice they are a little bit tinier at the top, and they get bigger and wider as they come down. So right up here by the tippity top, I'm going to draw a super short line that comes out like that. Let me zoom in so you can see this. I'm going to make a little short line that comes out. Then I'm going to come down a little farther and make a line that's a little longer. And then the next line is going to be a little longer. See, it's a little bit longer than the one above it. Now I'll zoom out so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to do it again, a little farther apart. And the next line is going to be farther away and a little bit longer. See, that looks a little longer than that one. My next one's going to be farther out and a little longer. Does that look longer than this one? I think it does. And then I'm going to stop before I get to the very bottom. So I'm going to make one final one about this long. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so you can see my whole paper. I know that doesn't look like this, but it will. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scribble right here along this line. And I'm going to scribble back and forth and make it fat here. And it's going to get skinnier as it goes to the tip. So I'm going to go really fat and skinnier and skinnier and skinnier. I'm going to do it on this side. Fat, skinnier, 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 skinnier. And I'm going to do that on each branch. So I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Super fat, skinny, 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 skinny. Fat, skinny, 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 skinny. And I'm going to continue doing this on each branch. Now, I know you're thinking, but that still doesn't look like a tree, Mrs. Torres. I know, we're going to do some more scribbling later. This is just starting to build up those branches. Now, if your hand gets tired when you're coloring, especially my hands get tired, sometimes I have to press my fingers like this to relax my hands. So if your hands are starting to get tired from scribbling, you can put your fingers together like this and stretch out your fingers and then go back to coloring. So once I have all of my branches a little chubbier, now I'm going to add a little bit of foliage or leaves in the middle sections. So I'm just going to take my crayon and go in a little wobbly circle all the way up to the top and all the way down the side. I'm going to do it again. So I'm filling in that space in between the branches with wiggly wobbly scribbles. And you'll notice it's starting to fill in the space in between. I want my tree to be pointy at the top and scribbly in the bottom, a little chubbier at the bottom. And once I've done this a few times, now the final part is just to scribble a little bit around each branch. Just a little bit, kind of making some wibbly wobbly scribbles so that it's not so perfect looking. See what I'm doing? I'm just kind of going around and 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 around, because we don't want every branch to look exactly like the one before it. You can even make some little ones in between. You can make your branches get a little fatter, a little longer. You can make a little tiny branch come off the side. When you're all finished creating your tree, then you can put a little point up at the top so it's super tiny up at the very tippity top. If you are all finished with your beautiful tree, you could add another one on the side here. You could add one on this side. You could even go in, if you have a white colored pencil or crayon, and you could put stars in the sky. So I'm going to take my white colored pencil and I'm going to add just a few twinkle stars, especially where my picture is dark up at the top. Where my picture is light, my stars aren't going to show up quite as well. Now, if you don't have a white colored pencil, a white crayon would also work. So if you are in the northern part of our Earth, up at the top near the North Pole, near Canada or Iceland or Alaska, you get an opportunity to see this amazing light show called the Northern Lights. Now, if you are in the southern portion of our planet, near the South Pole, then you can see the same phenomenon, and it is called the Aurora Australis. And this is at the south area, and it is southern Australia, New Zealand, Antarctica, and South America. Well, I hope you had fun today creating our beautiful Northern Lights picture. Remember, it is called the Aurora Borealis. I will see you for our next lesson. Have a great day.